And then comes what to me turned out to be very important. That was, when I talked with those who had killed or maltreated, it was very characteristic that none of them had, in a way, been close to the prisoners. They hadn't been in close connection. They hadn't talked with them. They kept away. I have a quotation in a book that I later wrote, that I tried to keep distance. They smelled so terribly. And they were so absolutely impossible, dirty and awful. Of course they were dirty. They had no chance to usual taking care of their bodies. And they smelled extraordinary. They had diarrhea, most of them, because of the terrible food, lack of food. They could not go to the toilet. If they left the line, they were being shot. So it was an extremely miserable route. But still, among those I interviewed who had not committed the most awful acts, there were so many small remarks on dialogues with the prisoners, and particularly one little indicator that I will never forget. So many of them had seen pictures. The prisoners had shown them life, home in Belgrade, from the balcony, the wife, the children, etc. So they had been in such a close relationship that they had seen the prisoners as human beings, not as wild animals. And then there was there's one man I come a bit one of the prisoners I come in closer contact with. He was a fantastic man. He was a teacher in Yugoslavia, and he had found, when he entered the north of Norway for a camp, he found a Norwegian-German dictionary. He found that little book. He was able to learn Norwegian during some months, was able to communicate. And then he once told me the sentence that saved his life. It was one of those usually terrible days. There were 5 or 6 Yugoslavians walking with spades, or whatever you call it, on your back, and then it was a Norwegian guard in front and one behind, and then the Norwegian guard behind cried out to the man in front, and he cried in Norwegian, "Do you have a match?" And the man in front said, "No." And then my man, the Yugoslavian prisoner, said in Norwegian, "But I have a match." And his claim to me is that that sentence rescued my life. Why? Because he left the position of being something non-human. He entered the community of human beings, and thereby he was transformed to one where the ordinary guard's ordinary values were to be listened to. And I think this is so important. It is not always, but a lot of later studies, experiments in the United States and other elements of studies have shown us, of course, that this is very, very important. If you are close and if you see the other as a human being, your chances for using torture or your chances for terrible acts vis-à-vis the other will be considerably diminished. Not totally. As, for example, Sigmund Baumann has shown from his studies of what happened in Bosnia. You might get an ethnic identity that in a way overwhelms you and you start killing your neighbors, or these awful things that happened also in Poland with a village where half of them were Jewish, where the non-Jewish half of that village literally took an active part in extermination of their next of the neighbors living next to them. So this is not without exceptions, but by and large it is a great advantage if you want to create human relations to those surrounding you. It is a great advantage of coming close to them. And then we are back to living in a small society. It's so small, this society. It is possible by and large to see those we are surrounded with as ordinary human beings. But it is a value also here. So this makes you, at least me, to an activist. To me it is so important to make attempts to preserve the smallness of my country. Therefore I'm very happy that we are not a member of the larger European Union. And it's important also in this city of Oslo, which is now climbing towards 1 million inhabitants, to preserve the social conditions or the also physical living structure, the shopping centers, everything, to preserve the possibilities for neighborhoods where people can see each other as neighbors and human beings, and not let everything disappear in the framework of the modern large state, completely dependent on state officials, police, prison system, etc. to guide our life. I have written lots on this. I have a little book out with the title of Tightly Knit as Society. That means, yeah, it is in Norwegian and maybe Swedish also. It has to do with, let us come close, but it's a question mark in the very end, because it is a question, how close? Closeness might be completely horrifying, clearly. So we need some sort of balance, close, but not overwhelming close. It's good to escape the extreme control. It's good to have that freedom that you can escape into another arena if you feel that way, or for certain purposes. But on the other hand, not to be too free, and particularly not create social conditions where you don't feel obliged vis-à-vis your society.